There's certain types of photos that really capture people's attention, and very high on that list would be a great image of a bird in still water with a reflection. There's just something that draws the human eye to a reflection. You find yourself bouncing from the subject to the reflection and repeating this as your brain tries to take in what it's seeing. But it's the reflection that really grabs your attention, especially if the water is extremely still, almost mirror-like. Add in a good-looking bird and hopefully an interesting pose, and now you have something special. You have a great photo. Before I continue, thanks for watching this video, and please subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment or a question, and if you're so moved, share this video. Also, stick around to the end to see even more reflection photos, which will hopefully inspire you to capture these types of photos the next time you're in the field. Okay, back to the video at hand. There are, in my opinion, 3 types of reflection photos, all of which make the final image that much better. First up is very still water, almost mirror-like. These types of reflection photos really catch your eye. Here's 3 examples. This is a least sandpiper on an overcast day, which is why the water appears white. Again, notice this mirror-like water, really a stunning reflection. Again, this is going to capture the viewer's attention. Next is this little blue heron with the tip of the beak touching the water. The reflection here is what makes for such a dramatic image. And then finally, this common gallinule, again in very still water, except for the ripples as the bird is swimming along. Again, all 3 of these are nice examples of reflections, again with photos that capture the viewer's attention. Next up is still water with some surface movement, but still allows for a strong reflection. Not as much as the first examples that I gave you. Again, we've got a little bit of movement on the water now, and here's a couple of examples of that. And the third set of examples would be still water, but more surface movement, sometimes created by the bird as they swim or move through the water, or possibly wind hitting the water. You get a little bit of this friction again, or whatever it is that's disturbing the water, but you can still get a reflection. Here's 2 examples of that. In all 3 examples, the reflection is a key part of the composition I'm trying to capture for each image. If you take away the reflection, it's just another photo of, fill in the blank of whatever the subject is. Now, a few tips and examples of some bird photos with nice reflections to break down what makes each image interesting to view and what you may want to look for the next time you have the opportunity to photograph a bird with a reflection. This is a photo of a snowy egret I took at Myakka River State Park in Sarasota, Florida. And a quick plug, check out my Birds of Myakka River State Park video here on the YouTube channel. I think you'll enjoy it. A tip you hear from many experienced bird photographers is, when possible, always try to be at eye level with your subject. This is basically true, but like with all rules, you sometimes have to be careful how much you implement that specific rule. In the case of reflections, you sometimes have to adjust the height that you're shooting so you can see the entire reflection. If you're too low, you may not see enough of the reflection, and that's not what we want. Again, we want to incorporate the reflection as part of the overall composition. With this snowy egret, I took my time and I lined up the subject as it was standing in the still water. I also had to be a little further away so I could fill the reflection in the frame with the subject. If I were too close and the bird was filling more of the frame, I'd have to back up. However, if you were using one of the somewhat newer telephoto zoom lenses, like the Canon 200-400, for an example, that wouldn't be a problem because you could adjust on the zoom. But with my fixed lens, like my Canon 600mm version 3, which I often have a 1.4 teleconverter attached, I'm now at 840mm, and that's a lot of lens, so I don't have that option of zooming in and out. So, if I'm too close, I have 2 options. Remove the 1.4 teleconverter, or I have to move a little bit further away from the subject. Both present problems. I could remove the 1.4 teleconverter and go from 840mm to 600mm, and that might fix the problem. However, I really try not to remove converters in the field or change lenses in the field. Now, have I done this in the field and changed out a lens or a teleconverter? Yes, I have. But again, I try not to do this. I've seen many other photographers over the past 30 plus years of doing bird and wildlife photography that are in the field and they change out a lens or a teleconverter and something hits the ground. And that makes for a very bad day, and that's why I'm reluctant to do this. The other option is moving your position away from the subject so you can include all of the reflection, but that has its own issues. First, you typically have a finite amount of time to get your shot before the subject moves on. And second, your movement might grab the attention of the subject, and that causes the bird to move away from you or fly off, and now you have no photos. That's not what we're after. You want to try to capture that image while you have the opportunity. Lucky for me, I put myself in a good position and a proper distance from the snowy egret, and once the bird started to preen, it was just a matter of waiting for the best head angle and the wing extended like you see in the final image here. I think I got the good photo that I was looking for. Another tip, remember, you're photographing birds in water, and the one thing about water is it's always level. I cannot tell you how often I've seen photographers, posting on social media of all sorts of birds, either standing in water or in the case of waterfowl, floating or swimming along, and the image is crooked or tilted off axis by just a few degrees. You should really try to avoid this. Again, water is always level. Here's an example of what happens with this photo of a limpkin, and I purposely have the image not level. Now let's straighten it out. Much better. That's what you want. It's got to be level. If it's in water, again, water is always level. Another thing to keep in mind is typically, but not always, morning locations with still water are better than afternoon because there tends to be less wind in the early morning. Remember, as the day moves along, the sun rises, the wind tends to pick up. No absolutes, just generally speaking, as I've taken many reflection photos in the afternoon, but the majority of these types of images I've captured really are in the early morning hours. And also, let's keep in mind, there's 3 families of birds that you're likely to photograph with reflections. It's going to be waterfowl, shorebirds, and wading birds. A few examples of waterfowl like this male wood duck, which are almost always found on ponds. The trick is to find a small pond where you're more likely to have the subjects a little bit closer to you. Even sea ducks like this male common eider can sometimes provide you with the opportunity to get an action photo as the bird is taking off, and just enough of a reflection to help enhance the overall look and feel of the image. Take away the reflection, and this photo really isn't as interesting. But again, you add this reflection in, and I think it's a real keeper. Next up would be shorebirds, like this greater yellowlegs, again, standing in extremely still water. This is also photographed at Myakka River State Park in Sarasota, Florida. This is from a morning shoot. Or this least sandpiper, taken only 15 minutes from my home just south of Boston. At this location, every so often in August, during the shorebird migration, there are small puddles that form on the edge of a parking lot right next to a salt marsh. After heavy rains, some of these migrating shorebirds seek out the fresh water to bathe and drink, and this has become one of my go-to spots after a rainstorm in August to check to see if I can capture these types of images. So if you have a spot near you where this might be possible, check it out after a rainstorm. And notice I waited for the bird to look slightly back towards the camera, plus the nice catch light in the eye. And as bird photographers, you should always be looking to capture that catch light. Okay, we've looked at waterfowl and shorebirds. Now it's wading birds. Their size, being physically larger birds, helps you as a photographer with the possibility of capturing reflection photos. Just find the right location with still water somewhere near where you live that has some wading birds, like this white ibis or this roseate spoonbill. And notice I show a horizontal and now a vertical of the spoonbill. When you're in the field, make the adjustment and choose what looks best for that particular bird and the reflection. It'll usually be pretty obvious. And if you make the right decision, there's a good chance you're going to return home with some very cool photos. Then there's the X factor. If you're lucky, sometimes you'll get a good reflection photo of something unexpected, like this black vulture, again, sitting in very still water. Or this barn swallow in flight. Both make for interesting photos, but it's the reflection that takes each to another level in terms of the overall quality, which grabs the viewer's attention. And last, but maybe not least, sometimes even more unexpected photos like these map turtles from Presque Isle State Park in Erie, Pennsylvania. When you're in the field, Sometimes you're going to see other things that capture your attention in terms of a reflection of some sort of other wildlife. Don't pass it up. Get the shot. And this is a nice example of these, again, these map turtles. Okay, so I could go on and show you lots of other reflection photos, but I think you get the point of today's video. Thanks for watching. Remember, please help protect wildlife and help protect wild places. Cheers. Now let's take a look at a few more reflection photos.